that presents the facts, then it's up to you to examine those facts and determine its usefulness and its place in society. What I mean by that is, well, there's 4 stories that I read late this week, okay? And they interested me a lot. And they actually have absolutely nothing in common. But they interested me. And I read them. And I thought about them. I thought, okay, here are the facts. What's the solution? And I know a lot of times, a lot of people don't look for a solution when there's a problem. I think a lot of reporters are like this, and actually a good reporter, it's not their job to look for a solution. It's just their job to report the problem. An example, my dear loving trophy wife. I've told this story before. I'll tell it again. So those of you that have heard it, please bear with me. Years ago, she was having a bad day at work, came home, we were talking about our day, and she went on and on and on about the problem she was having at work. And I was listening to them intently, truly listening. And when she was finished, I said, well, what if you did this to solve that problem? Or what if you talked to this person and did that? And what if you handled this that way? Would that help? And she looked at me and angrily responded, what makes you think I want to fix this problem? I just want to talk to you about it. She just wanted to use me as a sounding board. She didn't want to use me as a as a source to solve these problems. She wanted to just express her opinion, to talk about what happened in her day. I made the assumption that she wanted that problem fixed. She didn't. She just wanted to use me as a sounding board. And in many ways, that's how the news stories, that's how the news cycles, that's how we can look at these, okay? If somebody presents a story, and the 4 stories I'm going to mention, I'll mention those 4 stories. Then I'll get into each and every one of them in some level of detail. The California drought and global warming. Gasoline, and when I say gasoline, I mean gasoline called regular 88 or unleaded 88. Newer type of gasoline, and it's different from other gasolines, and they're not really telling you what it is. A woke professor who is talking poorly about animals, hate speech, and wants to ban it, and the recent decisions of the United States Supreme Court. Okay, 4 very different, 4 very interesting, I thought, if not informative, stories, features that I'm going to go over today. And they're kind of those 4 stories are kind of a microcosm of today's world. And you can read all those, think about them, and determine in your own mind, and perhaps discuss with others. I guess this is a kind of a discuss with others, a one-way discussion perhaps. It's always a two-way discussion if you'd like to respond via email to me. But a discussion on what this means in our society. And I've been a fan of this. In fact, this has been my MO ever since I was doing this podcast, ever since I've been on the radio. And it is that if you keep yourself informed, and when smart people talk about a problem and work towards a solution, when smart, caring people do this, the solution is always found. The problem is always solved. A decision is always met, and things are improved. That's my perhaps Pollyanna way of looking at things, but it's how I've always looked at things. And it helps me keep my sanity if I look at things in that way. So let's start with the first story that we talked about, the California drought and global warming. Both are facts, okay? And you're going to say, what do you mean, Strong? We don't have global warming. Yeah, we do. And when I say global warming, I mean, if you look at the temperature of the world, the temperature on the world, in our earth, on our world, is going up. Okay. Now, why is it going up? That's open for discussion. You cannot say, and this is all respect to all scientists who are much smarter than me, you can't say it's happening because we drive too many SUVs. Can't say that because you don't know that. You can say that may be contributing towards it. You can say that is contributing towards it. You can say, I believe that and other things are contributing towards it. You can say all those. Those are opinions. The fact is, we do have global warming. The world is getting warmer. And you can't even say that's a bad thing. To those who live in Minnesota, I think it's a good thing because it's no longer going to be 30 degrees below zero in the wintertime. Maybe it's just going to be 20 degrees below zero, practically a heat wave for those people. But yeah, global warming, it's a fact. Why is it happening? Who knows? The California drought is also a fact. Okay, they truly have a drought in California and have for a long time. They had they had 1 year where they had more than average rain in the past 10, I think. A couple other years where they had almost enough rain, but not quite enough rain. But last winter, they didn't have much rain at all. The snowpack in the mountains, which is what California relies on for their water, it was less than normal. And the spring was warmer earlier than normal. So the snow melted faster than usual. And what happens when the ground is dry and snow water runs over it? Well, it sucks it into the ground. So not only is there less water to fill the reservoirs, but less of that water is getting to the reservoirs because it's going back into the ground. The ground is like a sponge, and if it's dry, it's going to absorb water. So they're having to do all kinds of things in California. Lake Oroville, that's the state's second largest reservoir. Okay, it's dropped precipitously. People used to live on that lake in their houseboats, and they've said, you know what, this thing's too low. You better take your houseboats out now, or they're going to get grounded. And if they get grounded, you can't get them out of the lake. So people have become homeless because their homes were in the lake. They had to take the houseboats out of the lake. That's also where lots of farms and people get their water for their farms and for their drinking, okay, to use in their homes. It's also where people get their electricity, hydroelectric plants, okay? And the hydroelectric plant, the Edward Hyatt power plant, which opened in 1967, supplies California with a lot of their energy. In fact, that hydroelectric plant powers up to 800,000 homes when operating at full capacity. They're probably going to shut it down this summer unless they get rain. And it doesn't rain in that part of the country during the summertime, almost never. They probably won't get any substantial rain until, at the very earliest, October, probably November or December. That's when the rains come. So doing the math based on history, this lake is going to stop producing electricity. Now, all kinds of people were interviewed about this story. And it's, we have global warming. It's this person's fault. It's that person's fault. We need to have less carbon-based everything around. We're destroying the world. Okay. Maybe that's true and maybe that's not true. As I look at this story, there are two problems in California. Actually, there's one problem that leads to another problem. And I've spent a lot of time in California. I love it. It's arguably our most beautiful state. Sure, it's the land of fruits and nuts, but it's also the land of free thinking and lots of good ideas, great ideas come out of California. And historically, at least in the last 100 years or so, California has kind of led the way in so many things that we have. Manufacturing, tech, agriculture. As goes California, goes the rest of the country. Unfortunately, they're going down a goofy path. The number one problem with California, the number one problem that nobody addresses, it's so obvious to me, is there's too many people living there. That's the number one problem. 18 million people live in Southern California, which is a semi-arid desert. And they water their lawns, and they have grass, and they have swimming pools, and they expect to live like people live in the Midwest, where it rains all the time. Well, it doesn't. Okay? They grow lots of crops in the San Joaquin Valley. It's the breadbasket of the country. And I've seen so many articles saying, well, we've got to stop these farmers stealing all this money because the people need it. Or, I'm sorry, we need to stop these farmers from stealing so much water because the people need it. And the animals need it. And the trees need it. Okay, think about what you just said. These people, the farmers, are wasting water. What do farmers do? They grow food for people to eat. And that's a waste of resources? Think about what you just said. It's ridiculous. It's silly. And I would respectfully tell anybody, I don't care if they have 18 PhDs and stuff and are on the off the chart on the genius scale and smarter than me in many ways, in most all ways. I would sit across the table from them and explain to them, do you want to solve the problem with a water shortage in California? Here's how you need to start. Move away. That's the main problem with California. It's a wonderful place. It's a beautiful place. The weather is absolutely marvelous most of the time. That's why so many people live there. But because so many people live there, the topography is not meant to sustain that many people. There's never been a true problem with water in California, except for recently when so many people moved in. Now, climate change is one thing, global warming is another. We've had climate change all throughout history. We've had global warming, global cooling all throughout history. In the 1800s, maybe the 1700s, the Thames River in London froze over. That never happens anymore, but it did once upon a time. It wasn't rare, okay? We have global warming, and settlements in Greenland, where the ice cap is receding, have uncovered ancient Viking villages that used to be there. And they say, well, that's just proof. See, it's global warming. It's the SUVs. It's the coal-fired power plants that are causing all this. Think about what you just said. The fact that we have global warming is why we can now see these ancient Viking settlements. Well, once upon a time, folks, that means that Greenland was much warmer than it is now. And they didn't have SUVs. They didn't have coal-fired power plants. There were only a few million people in the world, maybe 100 million people in the world, certainly not 8 billion like we have now. So maybe global warming and climate change has always been a thing, okay? But maybe, just maybe, it has little to do with what we're doing to the environment. Now, that being said, should we do our best to reduce our carbon footprint? Yep, we sure should. We need to get away from coal-based power plants, mainly because they pollute the air. And who wants to breathe polluted air? But we don't need to do it tomorrow. We need to work towards it so that we can have sustain the lifestyle that we have. Okay. I've had people use the example of Denmark. Well, Denmark doesn't have any coal-fired power plants. Yeah. And in Denmark, it's 59 cents a kilowatt hour for electricity. I pay 12 or less. In other words, 4 or 5 times, my electric bill would go up 4 times from what it is right now. Think about that for a minute. Look at your electric bill. Times it by 4. Could you afford that? Well, you'd have to. How would you afford an electric bill 4 times the size, 4 times the price that it is now? Here's how you would do it the same way in Denmark. You would live in a house that's 4 times smaller. Think about that for a moment. Okay? You have a 2,000 square foot house. To make that electric bill affordable, you need to live in a 500 square foot house. That's what they do in Denmark. Congratulations. Do you want to live that way? Neither do I.